love this country, which is why I'm fighting for DEI. The foundational values of this country, our premise is that we should all be able to create the world we want, that we should be able to have our American dream. Mm-hmm. If you love this country, then you should want to do everything possible to make it live up to its ideals. And that kind of love resonates for me. And it makes me move harder in the spaces where people are telling me I'm not permitted or where they're trying to block others from getting access. When I think about your 7-year-old daughter or my nieces and nephews, when I think about your parents, they deserve to be in a country that loves them as much as we love our country.
Welcome to Not All Hood. Stacey Abrams is known as a political leader and voting rights advocate, but her best-selling political thrillers leave the campaigns behind and mix intrigue with lots of romance. We brought her on to discuss love. She talked about so many types of love, human connection, and what love means to her. Nothing was predictable from the time we sat down. Enjoy the conversation.
So you know how I love to start. Well, Candace knows how I love to start.
I do.
I love to start because there's so much going on in the world, right?
I hadn't noticed.
You didn't know?
Never considered it, huh?
So I like to start with like, what's good? What's good in the world or what's good in your world?
I have 6 nieces and nephews who are just spectacularly different children. I love the fact that they belong to other people. Which means I get to borrow them when I want.
Right.
And then return to sender. But they are just, it's watching these fascinating young people who are range in age from 9 to 13, but see the world so dramatically differently. And when I get to see them all together, when they're playing together, it just reminds me that, yeah, life is good. There are good things to be done.
Simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Candace?
And they're weird.
But you know, they're wonderfully weird, I bet, right?
They are.
Probably see a little bit of yourself in all of them.
I won't admit it, but yeah.
Yes.
I tell my daughter's 7, and I tell her, like, if somebody calls you weird, tell them thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, because it means you're not doing the same thing everybody else is doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. What's all good? You know what? I was listening to someone speak the other day, and they said, you know, if you wake up between 3 and 5, that's really a time that's a calling for you to do something. And it seems like I always wake up at 3:18, like almost consistently. Mm-hmm. And so when I was listening to it, it was actually a sermon. And he said, you know, at that time, that really is the time that the Lord is calling on you to be reflective on whatever it is in your life. And so for the past couple of weeks, I've just been taking that time to say, okay, what is it that I need to reflect upon? What does I need to think about? Because I will consistently wake up at that time. Wow. So I will use that time and space and be awake. I would try to force myself to go back to sleep, which was just working against my body. So now I do use that time, but with a different purpose. You know, and it's really good because the clarity that comes with it in the process. Then I wake up feeling a little bit different because I've gone through a thought process kind of in the middle of my sleep, you know.
I've started to embrace, because a lot of times I wake up, you know, somewhere between 3 and 4. Yeah. So I've tried to embrace, you know what, instead of being frustrated about that, let me actually take that time. I can lay here in bed and just think about,
exactly.
You know, and that usually puts me right back to sleep.
Exactly. And then you get to overthinking, right? There you go. Wait, what's good with you?
I asked the question without thinking about it. What's good with me? Waking up and having another day to do better and be better. And I don't want that to sound cliche, but I've got a couple of different turning points in my life, and I can often find myself battling overwhelm. And you know, for me, you know, every day is like, you know, another opportunity to be more on point with some things that I might have slacked off on yesterday or last week. So I think I'm really grateful for that, to be able to have the opportunity to
do better,
go at it.
Yeah. Not a message everyone gets, but we'll leave that there.
Well, was it? We were talking about earlier. We were talking about birthdays.
Yeah.
And Candace made this comment about how she celebrates birthdays and half birthdays.
I do.
My sister does that.
Yeah. And why?
Not promised tomorrow. So 6 months. I do March and I do September. It's not that I'm telling people, hey, come over to my house and let's celebrate my birthday, but just in my head and what I do. And, I do buy myself a little something. That's September, March and September, because we are not promised tomorrow. I'm not promised tonight, and so to be grateful and think about that, that's also good. Yeah.
I acknowledge my birthday.
You acknowledge your birthday?
So my sister, I have 5 brothers and sisters, but the sister that's closest to me in age, we're 11 months, 27 days apart.
Wow.
So we're the same age for 3 days. And those 3 days matter. So her birthday is celebrated for a month in December. It is celebrated on the half month because she turned 50 this year. I think this year is the year of Leslie. I recognize that I was born on December 9th. And I go on about my business.
No celebration?
I do, grudgingly. Yeah. I mean, I know I appreciate it. I do.
Yeah.
But Leslie's birthday's proximity to mine, I recognize that my approach to birthdays is just diametrically opposed.
Right. Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing. I mean, what I will say that one of the things I learned from Leslie, she enjoys her life. I mean, she's a federal judge, so she does very serious things. She deals with very heavy weighted things. But we had a mutual friend and they said, Leslie works from Monday to Friday and plays Saturday and Sunday. But you will never find anyone who works as hard or someone who enjoys enjoyment as much. And that balance is something I strive for. I don't get there at all, but I admire how much she is willing to give herself permission to be happy, permission to celebrate.
Right.
I haven't quite found that permission structure, but it is one thing I deeply admire about her.
But I look at your writing as a way or an outlet to kind of look into a different passion in your life that probably provides you some balance. I mean, of someone as busy as you, I would imagine that writing about love of all things and in the world that you are in would be something that is a wonderful outlet to help you find a balance.
It is. So I strive for work-life Jenga.
Okay.
Balance, I think, lulls you into this notion that if you don't have it, you're not doing something right. I realized early on I wasn't going to find balance. So instead, I have Jenga. I'm going to stack everything up. I'm going to put the most important things in the most structurally safe place. I'm going to add the other things that I want, that I need, that I'm called to do. And then I'm going to start pulling pieces out. And for me, writing is one of those Jenga pieces. And so when I get to write romance, when I get to write about love, I get to write and enjoy that part of who I am. But there are times where I pull that piece and like, oops, that was the wrong piece to pull. Or I've got to find another way to fit it in. But I always push back against the idea of balance, because balance presumes that if you don't have it, you're doing something wrong, as opposed to we have to construct the lives that we can live, not the lives that we think we should live, because we've got to be there every day. So to your point, we're not guaranteed anything. I'm not going to spend my life worrying about why I don't have balance. I'm going to spend my time doing the things that bring me joy, that help me learn, that help me feel like I'm doing my part. And I'm not going to worry about the fact that something is going to fail. I'm going to pull the wrong piece and the whole thing's going to collapse, because the whole point of Jenga is you can start again.
That's right. Right. After it collapses.
You just released me.
Yeah, right?
From a lot. Because I think I have that same issue with balance. I feel like because I don't have that balance, I'm not doing it right. But I love. So when you say, so let's say it's the writing is the piece you pull out, and that's the wrong piece. What makes that the wrong piece at that time?
It might be when I said I was going to write a book, because often the publisher either wants their book or their money back. So
that'll do it.
I got to have a story. And I didn't anticipate that this other thing would be happening at the exact same time. So when I started writing romance, it was during law school. I initially wanted to write espionage novels, but publishers wouldn't publish spy novels by or about women, and they would not put a Black woman's face on the cover. And so that was a Jenga piece where I thought I had this construct for what I was going to do. And publishers were like, no, you're not. And the idea fell apart until I realized, well, I know I'd read Spies. It turns out I was reading romance novels and watching General Hospital.
Right. There you go.
So I was like, okay, what can I reconstruct from this dream I had that's fallen apart? And the next piece was I was going to still tell the stories that at the time there weren't very many Black women who were being published in romance. And this was at the late 90s, 99, early 2000s. And so I found a publisher who would. And I rebuilt my idea of what I was going to do because the writing was what mattered. The story mattered. I was so fixated on the medium that I forgot the message. And when I gave myself permission to reconstruct, I became a romance novelist.
So you write about so many different things. The first time I picked up one of your books was during COVID, Deception. Yes. Which is a part of a trilogy though, right? So that's the second one. So I came on a little bit.
The Reckless.
Right, exactly. But it all worked out. But, you're writing about everything in all of your works, from the law to what's going on in the Supreme Court, cryptocurrency, national grids. But why add the love narrative to it? As you said, you started writing out in terms of spy novels, but then you added the love part. What does that do for you in terms of being able to write about love?
Well, I try to write about love in different ways in all of my work. So as a romance novelist, it became a way to publish because at the time, again, it was 1999, 2000s, you could list the Black women who were being published in America. It was Toni Morrison, it was Octavia Butler, it was Zora Neale Hurston, it was hers being republished, Alice Walker. And in romance, it was Beverly Jenkins and Brenda Jackson. And so I wanted to write action adventure romance with someone who looked like me on the cover.
Right.
And the way to do that was to bring romance into it because as a practical matter, romance novels are the most widely read genre of book in the world. But as a emotional matter, I was having a hard time dating and I got to create the guy I wanted.
But there you go.
And I also got to put my ex-boyfriend, whose dissertation is the basis of the first novel. He's in prison
in jail.
and he'll remain there
because you were mad at him while you were writing the book,
right? Well, so because when he sent me his dissertation to read, I was like one of 5 people outside of his committee who would read it and actually paid attention. And then I told him my idea. I was all excited, and he was like, that can't happen. This is why we broke up. You have no imagination. And he mocked it. And he later was helpful. So we're friends now, but he is in prison for the rest of that book, for the rest of his life. So there's also a little petty part to it, which love can be.
That's right. Yeah.
So, romance for me was one genre that let me tell stories about people, about relationships, and center romantic love. In my legal thrillers, so you mentioned Rogue Justice and While Justice Sleeps, and there's a new one that's going to come out in July. I write legal thrillers, but I talk about the romance of friendship, the love that comes with having really good friends that you can work with, that you can trust. In my children's books, I write about how love exists when you're little and you're trying to find your way in the world and how empathy and advocacy can marry. So for me, the through line of love is how do you build relationships that enrich you, that test you, and that make you better on the other side of the story?
Comrades, if you're enjoying this episode, join the conversation and make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below. Na.
What do you feel about, actually, I present this to both of you.
Yeah.
Because, we always talk about like Black excellence and Black love. And so I'm always, I'm always uncertain with how I sit with those terms, because I think we talked about this on another podcast. I feel like when you put Black in front of something, you're making it like subpar of that thing. But as a romance novelist who writes about love, as a happily married woman, which I love.
Why, thank you. Look, there's a whole journey. There's a book in me too. There's a book in every woman, right? Hello.
So how does Black love differ from love?
Wow. You know what? You're the guest. Guest goes first. Let's do that.
That was a nice sleight of hand there.
Yeah.
No, I think you can either see the appellation of Black as a distinction or an explanation. For some, they use it to distinguish one characteristic of love from, or one experience of love from others. And that is often pejorative. That's often intended to diminish what it means. Or it can be an example of how in a culturally specific way, there are challenges that have to be navigated and there are successes that are achieved that are real. And that doesn't diminish anyone else's experience of love, but it does say, we know that there's a path you have to take that is different because of who you are, that there are mutable characteristics to Blackness, especially in America, that mean when you make decisions about who you are and who you love and how you express that love, you are judged, but you are also enriched. And that's not a bad thing. It's when we decide that there is a value judgment to Blackness. That's when we get into trouble. I think of it as a qualitative description, not a evaluative judgment that says it's better or worse than something else. But it is important. As a woman, I experience the world differently than a man. And as a Black woman, I experience the world differently. So our responsibility is not to allow the descriptor to change how we understand ourselves. It is just another marker. It is another way of giving us insight and giving us context, but it is not giving us diminution and saying that we are less than because of what we experience.
I think the word I'll pick up on is the context, because if I come home, my husband knows exactly what type of day I've had. I have not seen anybody in my demographic, meaning my age group, who's also a Black woman. So he understands that when I come home, if I want to talk to someone who's in my age group that is even of color at all, man or woman, he's the one. He understands, that the day that I've had, he doesn't need to kind of ask me questions about, what it's like to be a Black woman. He knows exactly that who I am in the context of every single thing that I do.
All communities have shorthand.
Yeah.
If you're Southern, we have a shorthand.
Yeah.
If you are of a certain religious persuasion. So every community has a shorthand. That shorthand doesn't mean that you are castigating or somehow characterizing some other community as bad. It's just acknowledging the specific experiences that you have. And what I want for everyone is to be able to understand it's perfectly okay. When I write romance and have Black women on the cover, what then one of the dynamics I ran into is that I was discounted because I wasn't culturally specific enough. So if you read my books, there's no experience that is often attributed to the stereotypic Black experience that you will find in my work. And that wasn't intentional. It was that my lived experience, the way I write. I'm writing about ethnobotany. There aren't a whole lot of ethnobotanists anyway.
Right.
Mine is Black. And it was important to me that we had Black characters having universal experiences, because part of how we have to construct society is that our experiences are considered just as valid and not singular, that we don't exist in one person's imagination and one person's experience.
Sure.
Love is the same thing. Black love contains multitude, and it has different ways of being experienced that are culturally relatable, even if one person's living in the North, the other person's living in the South, but you say some things about Black love and it doesn't matter where you are, you know exactly what you're talking about. That shorthand helps us connect, but it doesn't exclude anyone else from having similar experiences. It simply says, we don't have to talk about which piece we're thinking about. We can get to the next part of the story.
The shorthand.
Yeah, you know what? This is a better example I have. I feel like I need to kind of
Okay. Take two?
Yeah, I need to take two. Okay. But you know what? So parents are getting older. And so understanding where your parent fits in and who's going to kind of take care of them. Are they going to go to a home? Are they going to be at home with you? So we're going through that in my family. And I have a lot of girlfriends who are going through that. So we're talking about Black love in a different way, in a kind of a familial relationship, which is just as important and feeds into your books also. And so understanding what someone said to me yesterday on the phone, she said, well, you know how Black folks do. We do not want to put our Black aunts, parents, sisters in nursing homes. Like that is not our first go-to. So even though it comes to a point where you might have to, there is that thing that you have to acknowledge. I know that we do, and me and my friends in the family, like, that's not what we do as a Black community. Mm-hmm. That is not how we were brought up. And to go to the nursing home way is a very big deal. That may not be as big a deal in other cultures, but it is very big deal and very specific to the Black culture in terms of my understanding and how I grew up, that you don't automatically and don't quickly or naturally put somebody into a home. And it's a big battle when push comes to shove.
So that being an example of
the Black love that you have inside of familial relationships, you know? And so when I think about Black love, I think about it inside of relationships between, man and woman or whatever, man and man, whatever you might be. Then your relationships inside of friendships, and then your relationships inside of family. Mm-hmm. And so when I think about love, I'm informed by all of those relationships in terms of what I think about it and what it means.
You talk about familial relationships, and I've talked about this publicly. I have 5 brothers and sisters, and we have a younger brother who has struggled with the carceral system and who has struggled with drug addiction. And there's a very specific way that we love him and that we acknowledge and accept the mistakes that he's made, but we also aren't going to abandon him because he's done things that we disagree with. In fact, we created a siblings book club because we grew up, we love to read. So we all grew up reading. And when he was released and was sort of trying to find his way, one of the ways we connected, because we were all in different parts of the country, we had a family book club or sibling book club. My mother is mad because she can't join it. Yeah, it's just for us. And we each rotate picking a book, and we talk about the book, and we learn things about each other that we did not need to know, but it was a way for us to be together. And we were able to use our experience, because in the Black experience, especially for Black men, that carceral experience is more prevalent than it should be. Mm-hmm. And how we had to help our brother navigate it and navigate the aftermath and deal with all of what comes with it meant that we had to find a way to love him. And yes, it was an example of Black love, because I had friends who said, you're still, I was running for office. Like, well, you're going to talk about your brother? I'm like, yeah. Like, you're not going to distance yourself? No, I'm not going to distance myself from someone who I watched grow up and I watched him make mistakes, and I'm going to watch him redeem himself. And I'm going to be a part of all of those spaces. And yes, there is a Black love that says that this is a part of how we have been forced to experience a country that does not always value who we are, especially the men in our lives. And my responsibility and our responsibility as siblings was to surround him, not abandon him.
Right.
It makes me think of seeing James Baldwin speaking, and he was talking about segregation and how because of segregation, white people miss out on a whole lot, right? There's a whole section of life and how you walk through life and values and cultural things that I think it was white kids miss out on. So it's interesting. So when we talk about, be it Black love, Black power, Black entertainment television. It's hard to get that one out. NAACP, Image Words, Ebony Magazine. Like there's always this thing where there's going to be someone from the white community who's going to be like, well, why do you have to have
that?
Yeah. Why do you have to have the Black version? And again, and it always goes back to, James Baldwin talking about, you don't understand that because you have been, you've not been
all
a
the
part
other
of this
versions.
culture.
Yeah, well, you have to have that version because you are all the other versions by default.
And the fact that they don't even get that part of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So it's like so again, be it Black power, Black love, there comes this on the other side, this feeling of, where trying to be superior.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the work I do right now is around diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, which has come up a bit in recent days.
Just a bit.
Really?
Just a bit.
Yeah.
I'm not aware.
But we don't see the same response to the existence of Mount Holyoke and Smith College, and we don't see the same response to yeshivas.
Right.
Communities often have to aggregate to themselves their experiences in order to navigate a larger world that does not always value or understand. It is perfectly appropriate for communities to come together and to create infrastructure, especially when you've been legally denied the infrastructure that others had access to. Women's colleges existed because women weren't allowed to go to traditional colleges.
Right.
Black colleges came into being because Black people weren't allowed to attend college. Yeshivas came into being because trying to get a Jewish education in a Protestant space was incompatible. It wasn't to attack the existence of the dominant culture. It was to acknowledge the legitimacy of a secondary culture that had to coexist with it. And we should not ever feel that we are diminished by the need to say we've got to live in multiple spaces. We should all strive for that. And part of what diversity, equity, and inclusion says, diversity means all people. Equity means that you have fair access to opportunity, and you cannot get fair access if people deny the legitimacy of your experience. It can't be fair if they pretend that you already have everything you need.
Mm-hmm.
And then inclusion says we're going to do what we need to correct past mistakes and invite everyone in so they have a path.
Right.
That's what DEI is. And that's why it is perfectly appropriate to have HBCUs and women's colleges and PWIs. I'm not mad at Harvard. I went to Yale. I also went to Spelman.
Right.
And in between, I went to the University of Texas. So I've had all of these experiences.
Right.
And those are okay things to have and to do.
Hey, comrades, if you are enjoying the episode, join the conversation. Like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Don't get yourself blocked. Keep it clean.
You know what? It's interesting because you bring up the social context in terms of how love is created. So let's go to Reconstruction era. If Black men were going up north, leaving families to look for work, so that because of what was going on socially, what was going on in America, and what forced people to do what they had to do, that's how love was created, generated, relationships were kind of managed and orchestrated because of what was going on in the world. And it's similar. You're saying, listen, it's because of what's going on in the world. This is a reaction to what y'all are doing. You're not letting us in. And I think that there's a social construct that you have to look at love into. That's my take on it. And I'm wondering if that ever is a consideration for you.
Love into.
You have to bring love in also.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
When you think about love, that you have to bring in this idea of, well, what are the times in which we are living? I think it kind of informs what love could potentially look like.
Well, I love this country, which is why I'm fighting for DEI. The foundational values of this country, our premise is that we should all be able to create the world we want, that we should be able to have our American dream. Mm-hmm. If you love this country, then you should want to do everything possible to make it live up to its ideals. And that kind of love resonates for me. And it makes me move harder in the spaces where people are telling me I'm not permitted, or where they're trying to block others from getting access. When I think about your 7-year-old daughter or my nieces and nephews, when I think about your parents, they deserve to be in a country that loves them as much as we love our country.
Amen.
And that love has to have an active force to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't simply be that we not only bring love in, we have to demand love for. And that's part of writing romance. I'm going to make you love me. You may not know me, but you're going to love me. And it's creating this lived experience where love has to be an active force. It cannot be a passive hope.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think about patriotism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And other people who love this country just as much, but their ideals are different, right? So based on their ideals, they're putting the same kind of energy into fighting for the country they want, as the energy that we're putting into fighting for the ideals of the country that we want. Mm-hmm. So there's like this, it's like we're both going head to head with this, this understanding of how much we love. We're putting our love at the forefront of our fight
and proving it trying to prove it in so many different ways. It looks totally different.
It does, and it is. But I will say two things. One, we're right and they're wrong, because and I can prove it.
1 and 2,
because love that requires the destruction of another isn't love. How can you love a country without loving the people in it? How can you love a country without loving the ideals it espouses? Mm-hmm. How can your love be real if your love requires excising so many of the pieces that make up what you say you love? And that's the place where I have tension. My notion of love is that it's expansive and inclusive and that it adapts. I don't need you to agree with me, but I need you to align with me. But when your love demands my destruction, that's not love. That's a power grab.
So I do want to talk about love inside of, a relationship, right? And that's often what is in your books. I want to say The Power of Persuasion by Stacey Abrams. Selena Montgomery. There we go.
We are one.
You are one. Has a relationship, and this is to both of you, okay? Has a relationship kind of moved your trajectory about how you feel about love and your place in the world? I mean, something that might have been, I don't know, overwhelming or so powerful or so tragic, I don't know, but that has moved the love needle in your narrative?
I'm going to make you go first.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, I think, having met my wife and having a daughter has completely expanded my vision of love, what I'm living for. I think for so much of my life, I had no interest in being married, let alone having kids. Mm-hmm. And I was very clear in that, and I was very intentional in terms of dodging the bullets before I was actually ready. But having a life partner who I align with in such a amazing and beautiful way, and having a daughter and seeing how she grows up in this environment of love, it does something for me that, I'm living, before I was just living for myself, but now I'm living not just for my union with my wife, but also living for my daughter. And it is a fulfillment that I never could have imagined. Ever. And so I think when we talk about good, this is, I feel like I'm with my marriage and my daughter, I honestly feel like we are living, our love is the stuff that people dream about, honestly. And I don't get to say that a lot because, I feel that people, I feel like as much as, I would love to go to the top of every mountain and yell, I get Tom Cruise when Tom Cruise was on, was it Oprah?
Yeah.
And he's jumping on the couch. I get dude, I get that. I won't do it.
Is that why you weren't speaking today? Please.
We don't have the couch. This set we don't have the couch. But I get it though. Like there's a so when I think of love and I think of the love that I have in my life, I've grown up in a loving environment. My parents love me. They've been, divorced, pretty much my whole life. But there's love they've poured into me. In my career, it's a public love,
sure,
that I've grown up with. So love has always been a huge part of my life. But having this kind of, and maybe that love is, has informed who I am as a loving person.
Mm-hmm.
But when about the love that I share with my wife and my daughter, like it is literally everything. And I don't brag on them as much as I'd love to. But I brag on them enough to my circle.
You do. You do. And it's wonderful. It really is. It really is.
So I write romance novels in part because of my aspiration.
Mm-hmm.
I've not found that person.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep making them up. I've made 8 of them. 9 if you count Jared, who is in the Avery Keen's novels. But I say it this way. My parents have been married for 56 years. And they live with me right now. They are moving back to their home soon.
That's real love.
That is real love, because they were supposed to be there for 2 weeks. It's been 3.5 years.
Wow.
But watching my parents love each other, watching how they raised us to take care of one another, watching how they taught us to take care of the world around us, makes me understand the dimensions of love and the different experiences. And for me, being in love should make me feel the way you two seem to. And so my aspiration is to find the person who provides for me that same sense of safety and security and opportunity. And so I write novels about it, like Power of Persuasion, and I look around, and if somebody sees somebody, send them my way.
There you go.
Not all hood.